The reaction in Washington has been a little out of bounds as far as I'm concerned. We are thrilled right now to welcome Senator Roy Blunt, who's in the thick of it there in Washington, D.C. Senator, not much going on up there today, huh?
Not much going on. Not much going on. The one thing you can say for the president, he certainly does fill up the space, and in a way that I think lets the American people know that he's trying to get things done. We've just finished this process of repealing regulations. 14 significant regulations done late in the Obama administration will never happen because of the President and Congress working together to do them. The Supreme Court is likely to be different for a long time because Judge Gorsuch is there, and we're moving along. The events yesterday, if you listen to what Democrats were saying before 6 o'clock and after 6 o'clock, you'd think you were talking to two totally different people, because before 6 o'clock it was Comey's terrible. After 6 o'clock it was Comey's wonderful. And it's got to be very disheartening for the American people to see those kinds of things happening when they really would like to see more choices in their own health care and somebody protecting their utility bills and the kind of things that I'm working on.
Did you have a position on Jim Comey before his firing?
I'd said pretty consistently for about the last 6 months that when asked about Jim Comey that I really hadn't understood hardly anything he'd done in the last year. And going back to July, October, since the election, he served the country in many ways, and until recently I found very little reason to find fault with that. But over the last year, I just couldn't understand what he was doing or why he was doing it or how he thought that fit into the norms of you'd expect from that job. The July press conference, it's not the job of the investigator to decide whether to prosecute or not. The two October press conferences that were so close together, they were almost back-to-back. And then after the election, just not quite being able to tell for sure what was going on, because suddenly there were things that you couldn't talk about, even with the Intelligence Committee that I serve on, trying to get to the bottom of what exactly happened with the Russians. And so what I said yesterday was serve the country well in lots of ways for a long time, but like a lot of other people, I really had serious questions about many of the decisions he's made over the last year, and I certainly wish the hardworking people at the FBI well as somebody new comes in to hopefully encourage that organization to be everything it should and can be.
Senator, will there be, I assume, a confirmation hearing for whoever the new nominee is?
There will.
There will.
There will.
In your committee?
No, that probably will happen in the Judiciary Committee, though.
All right.
The Intel Committee deals a lot with that person because the FBI has not only they have domestic obligations that require them to be involved in terrorism and national security. And so, the truth is, Mark, I probably saw Director Comey once every 6 weeks for the last several years, and in terms of just providing information to the committee, I thought you always wonder what they think they should hold back and what they think they should tell. But with the Intel Committee, they really should and do tell. They answer the questions they're asked.
Yeah, that's so in terms of what's been said today, and I don't want to belabor this point much longer, with the Democrats claiming there needs to be a special prosecutor, and apparently that law doesn't even exist anymore. What do you? Senator McConnell said he didn't think there was any need for that.
Well, if you really want to slow this investigation down and you really want to have the investigation instead of the conclusion of the investigation, special prosecutor is one way to get there. Select committee in the Congress is another way to get there. I do think that the committee that's been asked to come to a conclusion, the Intelligence Committee, and I mentioned that committee twice sort of in shorthand, but the Intelligence Committee is the committee that the various intelligence agencies, the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence, the National Geospatial Director, that's the NGA facility in St. Louis would be National Geospatial. They all report to those 15 senators that frankly hear things that the other 85 senators don't hear and don't want to hear. I think it's a committee that can come to conclusion. We're in the process of putting everything together, and I think the goal of that committee, and the president's well served by the goal of that committee, which should be to talk to everybody any reasonable person thinks you should have talked to, and look at anything any reasonable person thinks you should have looked at. And hopefully when all that information is on the table, everybody looks at it and with a significant bipartisan agreement, maybe not 100%, but significant bipartisan agreement, say, we've looked at what's there, and here is what we found, and either it's time now to do something else or time to move on.
Yeah, very good. Let me move to healthcare real quick. I know that there's been a lot of talk about what's going to happen in the Senate with this American Health Care Act. Can you give us some insight from your point of view?
Well, we're going to try hard to come up with a plan that moves back toward the American people having more health care choices, to have policies they can afford for the coverage that they think meets the demands of their family. And the reason we've got to do that is that Obamacare has just imploded the healthcare system, but particularly the healthcare system on the individual market, where you have to get your own health care. And then, by the way, you ought to be able to do that with the same tax advantages that somebody has that gets their health care at work. In our state, where you have 115 counties, 97 of them only have one company as of January of this year that is even willing to offer policies. And we would be extremely lucky if all of those companies, all those counties next year have even one company. So clearly this is a failing system. It was an idea that didn't work, and we need to get back to where people have more choices and more control over their own health care.
Yeah, it's a tough issue. I mean, I know it is, because in a sense, some people may lose their ability to get health care. I don't think it's the millions that the left is claiming, but on the other hand, we're facing a system that is imploding. Something's got to be done. I know it's not an easy political fix, but I'm hoping that even among Senator Paul and some of the others that have expressed concerns over this on the Senate side, do you feel confident that you guys will come out with something in reconciliation that will work?
I am confident we'll have a vote. I'm confident that we'll do everything we can to let all 52 Republican senators and any Democrats that want to join us be part of that discussion, and we'll just see if there are 50 votes plus the vice president there to move forward. One of the things here is, as you started to point out, I think, is that when you're dealing with everybody's health care, it's something that people feel strongly about. So many people that used to be happy with their health care system no longer are,
right.
And we've got to work hard to get back to that. And people, just because you have coverage, by the way, doesn't mean you have access. Most of the expanded coverage in the country has just been adding more people to Medicaid. Some of the expanded coverage has been people that bought individual policies that have such high deductibles that they really don't have access to health care, and that's why that market is failing.
Well, here's hoping that we can at least get it to a vote. The American people need to see something done. Senator Blunt, thanks so much for your time. I know you've got to run, and we appreciate you giving us a few minutes today.
Hey, Mark, good to talk to you, and thanks for what you're doing, talking about these issues every day.
Absolutely, sir. Have a great day.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. Senator Roy Blunt, reporting live from Washington, D.C. Interesting to hear his comments on the Comey thing, because he's met with him regularly. He said probably every 6 weeks Comey's been up there, and he's been a little baffled over the past year by some of the things that have happened as well. But he's very right about the difference between prior to 6 o'clock last night, the Democrats' position on Comey, and after 6 o'clock last night. There's a dividing line there if you look at the reaction they've had on this. I'll get to